Hello everyone, Ted the oldest Star Wars nerd here. Hope you're doing well today. I'm going to start my video series that will be discussing the old Star Wars Legends books, formerly known as the Expanded Universe. This video is the first part of many that will look at a comic collection called Tales of the Jedi. I am basing this off listening to the audiobook version, which has a full cast of characters, sound effects, and music. First, let me summarize the Tales of the Jedi story and where it lies in the Star Wars timeline. I found this great summary on a website called EZAudioforSoul.com. I'll have any links I mentioned in this video pasted down below. Now, here's what they had to say. About Star Wars, Tales of the Jedi audiobook. Tales of the Jedi audiobook is a series of comic books that were published by Dark Horse Comics between 1993 and 1998. They are part of the fictional Star Wars Expanded Universe and cover the Great Sith War and the Great Hyperspace War. The series represented the earliest chronological Star Wars audiobook stories until the publication of the Dawn of the Jedi audiobook series of comics and novels. This is the Tales of the Jedi audiobook dramatized version. It's a pretty enjoyable little audio drama, but maybe not the best audiobook to start with because there are so many characters to keep track of, but it was really fun. I enjoyed how much different voices we had, and the effects and soundtrack are amazing. I really think it's better to listen to this one than reading because Star Wars soundtrack. Follow the adventures of Ulic Qel-Droma and Nomi Sunrider, young Jedi Knights drawn into battle against the dark side, a battle that may decide the fate of the planet and the galaxy. And that's what they had to say on that website. So this audiobook covers a collection of comic books that have been dramatized by a full cast of voices doing all the characters. In this, you get voices, music, sound effects, everything that really brings the story to life. Now, let's see, it was written by John Whitman, based on Tom Veitch's comic. Now, the characters in all these pictures are directly from Wookieepedia. I'll put links down below at the bottom to all these characters' bios and everything, so you can look them up yourselves. Please see below for the full list of credits. But let's start with the main characters. Now, we got Ulic Qel-Droma, his brother Kay Qel-Droma, and their friend Tat Danita, who is a Twi'lek. And in the first part, and then we get introduced to Nomi Sunrider and her daughter Vima in the second part, which we'll get to later. Anyway, the bad guys in this part are the Onderon Queen Aminoa. Now, full spoilers here. This is going to be my quick summary of the full events from part 1. Hope you can follow along while I completely butcher the story. That's a good reason to check out the full story for yourselves. That way you can find any mistakes I make and maybe make things a little bit more understandable for you. But anyway, I hope you enjoy this. So, here we go. Ulic Qel-Droma and the Beast Wars of Onderon. 1,000 years after the defeat of the armies of the Sith Lord Naga Sadow, 3 Jedi apprentices, the brothers Ulic and Kay Qel-Droma, and the Twi'lek, Tat Danita, are busy learning the ways of the Jedi from Master Arca Jeth on the planet Arcania. Following a lightsaber training match, in which Ulic demonstrates his skill with the blade, Master Jeth gathers his 3 apprentices to tell them the history of a planet called Onderon. Thousands of years ago, Jeth explains, the atmospheres of Onderon and one of its 4 moons, Zun, briefly came into contact with one another, thus allowing the native flying beast from the jungles of Zun to migrate to the surface of Onderon. Even though the native Onderonians proved to be easy targets for these gigantic animals, the Onderonians eventually learned to hunt the great flying beast which had invaded their world. Master Jeth continues by explaining how the arrival of the Zun beasts forced the primitive tribal cultures of Onderon to evolve into a modern civilization, establishing themselves in the walled city of Iziz, thus allowing for an easier defense against the flying beasts. As Iziz grew, so did its laws and customs. As part of these customs, criminals are cast out into the wild, beyond the protection afforded by Iziz's walls. However, these criminals eventually learn to tame the flying beasts and manage to organize themselves into war bands against Iziz. These exiled criminals, who Master Jeth explained were called Beast Riders, eventually found themselves in open warfare with the forces of Iziz in a conflict which would become to be known as the Beast Wars. This conflict the three apprentices learn, had been raging for hundreds of years, and the Onderonian royal family had requested the aid of the Jedi to help bring an effective end to the conflict. Following this, Master Arca explains that he had been chosen as the Jedi Watchman for the Onderon system, and that he is going to send his three apprentices to Iziz to help bring about a peaceful end to the Beast Wars. At first, Ulic Qel and Taut Danita are surprised at this, but then jump on the chance to prove themselves on their first mission. The trio depart Arcania and soon arrive at Iziz on Onderon, where they are granted an audience with Queen Aminoa, who is the ruling monarch at the time. However, during their meeting with Aminoa, several Beast Riders burst through the large palace windows and attack the Jedi and the royal guards. During the ensuing struggle, a special unit of Beast Warrior Commandos enters the fray and manages to kidnap Princess Gallia, daughter to Aminoa. Demanding that the Jedi find and rescue her daughter, Aminoa sends the three apprentices outside of Iziz to pursue the fleeing Beast Riders. Accepting Queen Aminoa's demand for help, Ulic Qel and Taut Danita journey into the Onderon wilds and eventually make their way to Kira Fortress, the forest citadel of Beast Lord Modan Kira. There, the Jedi discover that Gallia's kidnapping is actually an elaborate ploy planned by herself and Oron Kira, Modan Kira's son. The kidnapping, they explain, took place so that Gallia can be rid of the dark influence of her mother and the Onderonian royal family, and also so that she could marry Oron, explaining how her family had been influenced by the dark side of the Force for generations, beginning with a fallen Jedi named Frida Nad. Gallia and Oron are able to enlist the help of Ulic and his companions in overthrowing the current government of Iziz. Believing that a peaceful resolution to the Beast Wars should be attempted, the Jedi, Gallia, and Oron Kira make their way back to Iziz and are able to speak with Queen Aminoa, pleading that she help bring an end to the war. Despite their intentions, the Jedi and their allies are expelled from the royal hall by Aminoa, who had called upon the dark side to drive them away. Sensing that the peaceful solution has failed, Modan Kira gathered together the various other Beast Lords from across the whole of Onderon, and together the combined armies of the Beast Riders attack the city of Iziz. The battle turns into a fierce affair in which Ulic Qel-Droma's left arm is cut off, and Aminoa is forced to retreat below the royal palace to the tomb of Frida Nad. Meanwhile, having sensed that his apprentices were in trouble, Master Jeth travels to Onderon and arrives during the Beast Riders' assault on Iziz. Using the art of battle meditation to help turn the tide of the fighting against the dark side forces of Aminoa, Master Jeth is able to bring a swift victory to the Beast Rider armies. Joining his apprentices, Gallia and Oron in the royal palace, Master Jeth confronts Queen Aminoa in the dark side tomb of Frida Nad. Overwhelmed by the power which Jeth possesses, Aminoa is instantly killed by the effects of the light side of the Force. Following the death of Aminoa, Princess Gallia and her new husband, Oron Kira, take their places as the new rulers of Onderon, thus effectively bringing an end to the Beast Wars which had plagued the planet for generations. So, okay, notable events. It's kind of weird how they do the Force here, saying that the royal family has been under the influence of the dark side, and Frida Nad being a Jedi. That, I mean, we've known of dark Jedi that fall and go to the dark side, of course, but it's just kind of odd. But these were in the early days of writing it down, so they didn't really exactly have all the rules for the universe in place and how the Force worked and all that back then. This is very early in the expanded universe time of things. Let's see, Force abilities. I think this was probably the first mention of battle meditation, which the Master Arca Jeth can meditate, and it helps them communicate with each other during the battle and sense where things are, and helps everybody when their battle to work better in it. It's really hard to explain. Interesting ships in this one. They didn't really talk about the ships too much. It was adapted from a comic book, so the pictures were probably more what you were supposed to look at in that. But they did discuss the the beasts for the beast riders, the dragons that they rode on, and those were interesting, sounded like. So here we are at the end of part 1. Everybody's happy and they all go about their daily lives. We've got a new ruling family on Onderon. The Jedis are off going to do their Jedi thing, go past Master Arca, hang around Onderon, and keep things going, do their Jedi thing. So in this part we get a sense of the early days of the Jedi Knight. Things seem to be fairly familiar. You got a master, you got his students, a story of them dealing with their first mission as Jedi Knight hopefuls. My only complaint would be the royal family. If they were under the influence of the dark side for generations, they knew of Frida Nad, they practiced dark side magic, as they called it. They have to know that the Jedi are the enemy of the dark side, and if they're aware of this, why would they summon Jedi to come into town to help, dig around and do things for them? It seems like Frida Nad would have been against that sort of thing, but then again, it's kind of barely loosely held together, and some of the plot points seem kind of forced, but, it was a comic book, so there you go. Check it out. Let's finish up here. So pros, like I say, great story, good characters. Each character seems to have their own personality and their own things to deal with. They seem believable-ish for comic book characters, so, there you go. The cons, they're adapted from a comic book. It tends to jump around a bit. 1 second, the princess is saying she doesn't want to be rescued. Then there's a jump, and not even 20 seconds later, the Jedi are all at her wedding. It's very forced, very rushed. But then again, it's an audiobook based on a comic book. So they're having to turn mostly pictures and sparse dialogue into all dialogue. So there's a forced scene to where they have to explain some things that it just sounds not too natural. Anyway, part 2 will be about the saga of Nomi Sunrider, so stay tuned. Again, this was written by John Whitman based on Tom Beach's comic. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed this video. Please like it, please subscribe to it, please come back and watch all my videos, please recommend me to all your friends and family. I'm going to go through all the books in the series and hopefully learn a lot. Thanks again, this is Ted, the oldest Star Wars nerd.